Okay, so new update. It's a small update, so I don't expect this video to be very long. But update 1.0.12, Allied Command. We apparently get bots in skirmish now. We are pleased to present update 1.0.12, Allied Command. This update introduces an important new feature, several gameplay improvements, and a number of resolved issues. The development team has made the decision to dedicate this update primarily to technical enhancements, separating them from balance-related changes. In other words, there's no balance changes in this patch, and I've already seen people complaining about that. And honestly, not to go into a 45-minute rant, I'm just going to try to ignore it. However, this in no way means that work on balance has ceased. On the contrary, we are preparing a global update, which will include not only significant balance adjustments, but also deeper changes to core game mechanics, based on extensive feedback from our players. We closely monitor your feedback and carefully view your suggestions and take your comments seriously. Your input helps us identify issues, find growth points, and move towards solutions that will make the game more stable, enjoyable, and comfortable for every player. And we get allied AI bots in skirmish. The key feature of this update is the introduction of allied bots in skirmish mode. Our goal was to ensure that bots act as reliable, predictable teammates, while still remaining flexible enough to adapt to dynamic in-game situations. To support this new functionality, we expanded the lobby settings. Bots can now be assigned to any available slot on either side, while retaining familiar options such as difficulty and specialization. This gives players more room to experiment, assembling custom teams, balancing sides, and testing new tactical approaches. The skirmish mode has also received several quality of life improvements aimed at enhancing convenience and gameplay. Convenience and gameplay variety. Lobbies are now private by default and automatically filled with bots upon creation, allowing matches to start more quickly. Additionally, you can now change the time of day, making each battle more atmospheric and adding greater variability to battlefield conditions. Excuse me. Skirmish mode now features AI bots for each map. Some skirmish quality of life improvements, such as the change in the time of day, making skirmish lobbies private by default, and skirmish lobbies will now be populated by bots as soon as such lobby has been created. Post-match screens, added display for scores, match duration, and the reason why match ended. And then there's general fixes and improvements, and it's all largely stuff like that. And then apparently they also fixed some issues with lofting munitions like the Javelin, the Hellfire, the Hermes A, and whatnot, where, from my understanding, if the shooter could see the target, fire the missile, and then the target briefly went unspotted, so the shooter can no longer see the target briefly, the missile would not reacquire the target. So that should make things like Javelins and Hellfires and whatnot slightly more effective. I remember in update 1.11, there was apparently an issue where the missile's terminal guidance would get weird. Let me check. Project history, matchmaking. Here we go. Where is it? Fixed an issue. Fixed an exploit. Sam's preventing player. Fixed an issue preventing proper reacquiring of terminal guidance missiles, which I think is also referenced here. One factor explaining the US win rate staying low was the appearance of a bug preventing terminal guidance missiles from reacquiring in some conditions. The US faction I don't understand why they don't use nation. I know I've already said that before, and I know I've said that they probably don't do it for political reasons. But just nation would make more sense. Relies on this type of guidance more than Russia, and Javelin missiles with their lower range were particularly affected. If memory serves, Russia only has like 3, I think, missiles that are terminal guided, maybe 4. But and 2 of them are helicopters. You got the Hermes A, and then you have the Lemire, and then you have, I think it's something on the T-14. Vehicle, is it one of the missiles on the T-14 terminal? Sprinter, no, Sprinter is semi-active. Sprinter's also apparently moving fast. Sokol, okay, so the Sokol is terminal guided. Yeah, so you've got that, which is terminal guided, and top attack, and doesn't actually do all that much damage, apparently. Kind of interesting. And then you have this thing with these, which are terminal guidance. And then I believe you have, oh, those are empty. Really? Are those just empty base? These things, which are also terminal guidance. And I think that's pretty much it when it comes to ATGMs. Anyway, I digress. Lofting munitions. Sometimes not work. Fixed an issue where bombs and artillery didn't apply their damage to top armor in case of direct hits. So apparently if an artillery shell hits something directly, it's supposed to count as top attack. Okay, this change I absolutely love. Attack drone's logic has been improved. Now clicking right mouse button on a target will lead to a direct attack order. Drone ammunition will be used as soon as possible instead of moving closer to the target and then auto attack. I remember playing the oil refinery invasion scenario, and I also believe the zombie scenario, and not being able to tell drones to attack certain things was very, very annoying. And now they appear to have fixed this, which, again, I really, really like. So, yeah. Fixed an order-related exploit allowing planes to fly outside the play zone, which honestly, I thought that was kind of intentional, because planes aren't the most maneuverable things, and so they have large turning circles, so it kind of would make sense if you had the ability for them to sort of leave the play zone a bit in order to make them more, to make it more comfortable for their use. Kind of like something like what Battlefield 4 did, in that the playable area for jets was larger than the playable area for everything else. Fixed an issue where units inside a transport were able to laze targets while being inside a transport, which is hilarious. Although you can argue that for certain transports that have roof hatches, they're not lasing there's no bug, and there shouldn't be an issue, because you could just argue that it's the guy with a laser designator popping out of the roof hatch. It's still probably just way too OP, and honestly, it's a good thing that they fixed, but I find the mental image funny of like a scout sniper popping out of the roof hatch on an LAV-25 with the laser designator. Or for something like a Humvee, you don't even need to pop out of a roof hatch. Those things don't have doors anyway. I'm pretty sure they don't have doors. Oh no. It does have doors, but you could just say the guy's in the back. I just like the idea of one of these guys popping out of one of these hatches with the laser designator. It's funny. I mean, still, it's a change that needed to be made. It's a bug, and they needed to fix it, but it's still funny. Fixed an issue where when cover bonus from both stress and buildings has been applied at the same time in some cases, which, from my understanding, was actually making infantry surprisingly tanky. I'm assuming cover bonus kind of acts like a damage negation. Oh, excuse me. It kind of acts like damage negation. Like, it limits the damage which the unit can take. Not limits it, but it acts like extra armor. It reduces the damage which the unit can take. So, fixed UI issue with scenario carousel in the main menu. Various crashes due to entity misuse issues. Various issues with overcast ambient on some maps. They're too dark. That kind of sucks. I like darkness, but okay. Fix some minor issues in blackout and self-service campaign missions. And then there's the mission editor fixes and improvements. And if I'm going to be entirely honest, I do not understand anything here, but okay. We continue to develop the game and are preparing updates that will make the gameplay deeper, more stable, and engaging. We have been working on the game every single day since its release, and there are many important milestones and improvements ahead. We want to express our sincere gratitude to each of you for your support, involvement, and genuine commitment to this wonderful adventure. Thank you for being with us. We wish you all happy holidays and a well-deserved break. We'll be doing the same. And we'll see you in 2026. Okay, so this is basically the last we're going to hear of them until the new year. So, hang on. Okay, no, the hatches are still usable. So, they've changed a bunch of things in Skirmish. And so now I keep saying so. The lobby is now private. What's this? Okay, that just fixed the map. We can now see the different... Oh! Okay, so this is randomized. Apparently. But we can now see the different, the AI bots and the enemy bots. 3 guard tank brigades. Okay. Well, they're not going to have much in the way of air. But support's going to be a massive headache. With that lineup. What do we have? I am limited literally to the RU default deck, which is coastal mech. So tanks are gonna be a bit meh. Although ATGM carriers aren't bad. Air defenses are also gonna be a bit meh. In fact, air defenses are gonna be borderline useless because only 2 of these decks are going to be able to bring in aircraft. Artillery... Well, 3 2S7s. Not bad. I can try and flex the air tab, but it's probably not going to work against Book M3, Book M3, S300V4, Book M3, S300PM. So... infantry and armor, they're alright, but still, I'm not going to have enough artillery in my opinion. And then we have mech infantry, so heavy artillery, lots of infantry. Decent infantry and artillery, coastal troops, and VDV. Both of these guys are going to have not great days trying to get their air tab to work. Although if I go over here, what do we got? SOCOM, Armor Brigade, Airborne. I'm just thinking about the air tabs here. That's going to be a lot of air power versus a lot of pretty solid GBAD, if I'm going to be entirely honest. So I could either reinforce that with something like this or this. Or I can go with something like this to try and get solid ground coverage. Or even this. Anyway. So you have options like that. Or you can go something like this, which we have mech, striker cav, mech, motor rifles. Okay, so artillery's not going to be bad by any stretch of the imagination. Armored, Marine Corps, SOCOM, Marine Corps. Okay, well the air tab and the helicopter tabs could be useful, but long-range artillery is going to be a bit lacking. SOCOM, VDV, armored, coastal. You know, that's decently well balanced, I think. You've got recon and infantry, armor and artillery, decent support in air, and then this is also going to come with decent air, and then this comes with decent air as well. Okay. But there's also other options here, like map size, automatic, large, small, and then there's daytime, evening, day, morning, and night, which is kind of interesting because I initially thought there was only like day, night, and dawn. So it's kind of interesting that there's a distinction between evening and morning. And then we have the time limit, which you can adjust, which adjusts in 3-minute increments. I can't help but notice. So that's kind of interesting. Can I... Okay, so no, I can't just edit it figure-wise. And then income, which adjusts in 25-point increments. I'm assuming this is the number of points per minute, which is also very interesting. Alright. And then what else do we have? Actually, I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, it's not a very big update. You just have these maps. So, you can just pick a map. You know, I'm actually thinking I might actually get into skirmish. Like, what I'm thinking I might do is actually play skirmish games and record them, because I don't play multiplayer. I mean, as I showed before, I don't play multiplayer. So what I might do is try and play skirmish. And maybe do something like that. And record that and make content of that. So, I might do that. And if I do something like that, I'm probably going to start small. So, something kind of like this, where it's just me versus a single bot. Go tank. I don't know, I'm just thinking that if I'm going up against a guard tank, I might want to pick something like this. Although the air defenses are going to be absolutely pointless. I don't have a deck that isn't very heavy on air defenses, do I? This would basically be the closest. I mean, even this one is still pretty heavy on the air defense. A lot of infantry to play with, though. Helicopters and air. Okay. But like I said, I might end up doing that. I don't know. It would be some Broken Arrow content for sure. Although it probably wouldn't be as engaging as actual multiplayer matches. Honestly, though, the problem is I can't play multiplayer. I mean, I could, but if you put me in a game that I cannot pause, I'm going to get overwhelmed. And I don't think that's going to be very fun for me or very enjoyable to watch. Because I don't think that fast. And plus, I like to play really, really, really conservatively to try and reduce the number of losses that I take, and I just don't think that would work with multiplayer. Anyway, so that's basically it for this video. I don't know the time, but it's not going to be long, I don't think. So yeah, I'm interested to see what the balance update that they talked about here, this by no means on the contrary, we're preparing a global update which will include not only significant balance adjustments but also deeper changes to core game mechanics. I'm very, very interested to see what that is, and I will most certainly be making a video about that. So yeah, see what kind of balance changes they make, whether or not they're going to nerf or buff one or the other. I've got a few ideas for things that they could do to nerf and buff things. Like, for example, Russian artillery. I think that the 2S, what is it? The 2S, the Mosta, this thing. Where's the Mosta? There's the Mosta. I think this thing is honestly a little bit expensive at 160. And then you can upgrade it to the Mosta S for 130. Or up to 190. And okay, the reload time is actually pretty solid for artillery standards. 5 to 7 seconds. Koalitzia, which is an automatic loader, is 4 to 5 seconds. Meanwhile, you've got the A6, 8 to 10, 8 to 10, that's 5 to 6. Where's Brutus? Brutus is 7 to 8. Where's the SPH? The SPH is 7 to 8, even though that's an auto loader as well. Where's the Hawkeye? 5 to 6. So anyway, my point is that they can make this cheaper, particularly if you want to go with the Mosta, the M2 upgrade. And sure, it makes the gun more accurate, I notice, but it doesn't really do things like buff the range. Or for that matter, if you want to go over to here for something like the Katsia. 3,500 meters, okay, sure, I understand it, but still. Anyway, I digress. I'm very interested to see what kind of balance changes that they do. I wouldn't mind seeing Russian artillery get buffed slightly. Mainly because, again, they're artillery-centric. They also made reference to changes to game mechanics, and I'm very interested to see that. Because if I'm going to be entirely honest, I've seen some people suggesting that they should change certain mechanics, like get rid of the point income system. I saw another person suggest that they should put a timer on bringing in aircraft. So you call in an aircraft, and then 2 to 5 minutes later, the aircraft actually shows up. And from reading the post, this seems to... I think the idea behind it was that it makes players think about what aircraft they're going to need. So that instead of just calling in an aircraft and then using it and then having the aircraft leave, the aircraft would loiter over the back line. So if you need it quickly, you would have to have it loitering over the back line, which would make it vulnerable to things like SAMs or air superiority fighters. Interesting change. I don't agree with it, but it's at least an interesting thought. But anyway, I digress. I'm interested to see what they do, but there's not much to talk about in this video. Okay, really quick, here's something I just noticed poking around in here. Apparently, shoulder-fired AT launchers now have a high-altitude range listed. You have ground range, low-altitude range, which is mainly intended, like, they're used against helicopters. But now they also have a high-altitude range listed, which I think is very interesting. And, yeah. So, there wasn't anything like that in the update. It doesn't change anything like this, but it's very weird. I wonder. Grab an autocannon. Effective range. Okay, well that doesn't appear to be limited to low altitude or high altitude. So, okay. A 50 caliber I don't think is going to be limited either. Anyway, just that small little aside. I don't know why they have a high altitude range listed, but it's odd. So, anyway, I digress.